dialogue on all sides. Burhan Ghalioun described Mr. Annan's proposals as pointless and unrealistic. The urgency of the calls for help will resonate further, though, today as the UN's head of humanitarian affairs, Valerie Amos, visits refugee camps along the Turkey-Syria border. Well, joining me now from Washington is Sasha Ghosh-Simonov, who's the executive director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force based in the United States. Thanks very much for joining us. I wonder if I could start by getting your view on Burhan Ghalioun's comments. Does he speak as one voice in terms of opposition?
Well, Dr. Ghalioun for sure is the leader of the Syrian National Council, and the Syrian National Council is an umbrella organization designed to help facilitate communication and organization of the entire Syrian opposition, both internally and externally. From that perspective, absolutely, he does speak with one voice. And I do think in this case, he's absolutely right. People inside Syria feel that they've exhausted all means of peaceful dialogue and diplomatic efforts to engage the Assad regime in serious discussions for reform. And at this point, we need to move beyond those discussions to more assertive effort to remove Assad from power.
So you would accept that you would feel his argument is right, but is he perhaps the right person to be pushing it? It does seem from within Syria that there are many people who have no time at all for him and are very disappointed to see the Free Syrian Army and the Syrian National Council at odds on what seem to be some of the key elements.
I mean, clearly, you know, this Syrian National Council has some issues to sort out, some logistical issues in terms of lines of authority and discretion. But the point is that the Syrian National Council is the vehicle in which the Syrian opposition did decide to use and has used so far. People would like to see it be more assertive and more cohesive in its message, but I do think that people understand there's no alternative vehicle. So making the Syrian National Council work is in everyone's best interest going forward.
Right, and I presume nonetheless that should it reach the point at which the Syrian National Council might be able to play a role in the running of Syria, that's almost when the real problems might emerge.
I would agree with that statement, absolutely.
And in which case, what scope for the Syrian National Council now in building the sort of credibility on an international level to think, yes, these are the people we should back?
I mean, I think it's very clear that they need to do a better job of speaking with the internal opposition groups and having the ability to channel their voice more effectively into the international forum so people can hear directly from the Syrian people. And certainly from the perspective of people inside Syria, they feel like they're very alone. So having a voice to the outside world is a very effective capability for them to have, and the SNC should be there to do that.
And I suppose, briefly, it's very difficult after some 4+ decades of rule by the Assad government or regime, whatever we might call it, for any other groups to form something like a coherent opposition.
I agree, and that's why I think we should commend the Syrian opposition for how far it's come in the past year. I mean, you're talking about over 40 years of what I describe as psychological trauma. The inherent ability for people to trust each other in Syria has been stripped away bit by this regime so that they can maintain control. It's a security state. So from that perspective, they've come a very long way to the point they are today. So I think they should be commended for that.
Sasha Ghosh-Simonov, thanks very much indeed for sharing your views on the state of the opposition, both within Syria and